Good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR and welcome back to another video. 1025, that's the number of Pokemon in existence as of making this video, and unfortunately, Papa Game Freak did not give all of them their undivided attention while growing up. Many Pokemon have received reparations over time for being neglected, like getting an evolution in the case of Quillfish, or Stantler, or Dunsparce. But today, we're going back in time to find out which Pokemon got the absolute worst treatments in their debut generations. These are the Pokemon that Game Freak forgot about. But before that, I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, AFK Journey, available for free on mobile and PC. AFK Journey is an innovative ethereal fantasy RPG that is not only cross-platform, but also offers even more features with its PC-compatible side-scrolling elements. In the world of AFK Journey, you embark on an adventure as Merlin and gather heroes from 6 factions to find the perfect winning combination. There are plenty of beloved returning characters from AFK Arena, as well as new ones to discover. From Golden Wheat Shire to Viduso Mountain Sail, AFK Journey offers many wide maps, fun puzzles, and cool characters, all with effortless one-handed gameplay. And on top of AFK Arena's familiar resonance, Journey also includes equipment resonance. And as usual, all resources grow while you eat or sleep, so grinding isn't a concern at all. During AFK Journey's official release, 40 heroes will be given away, including epics, giving you a wide array of RPG strategies off the bat. Plus, you'll get more than 200 free pulls by progressing through the game and completing events. Use my CD key AFK Journey 88 to get 100 free diamonds and 18,888 golden coins. Thank you AFK Journey for sponsoring, let's get back to the video. For the Kanto region, the first Pokemon that immediately came to mind was Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd is one of only 2 Generation 1 Pokemon who can't be obtained anywhere in the wild in the original games, as both it and Lickitung have to be obtained through trading, at least until both of them eventually got wild spawn locations in Pokemon Yellow. Where Farfetch'd clears Lickitung in obscurity though is in NPC trainer data. Not counting the Sevi Islands, which were added later in Fire Red and Leaf Green, only 2 trainers in the Kanto region use Farfetch'd on their teams. Birdkeeper Edwin and Birdkeeper Donald, who may funnily enough be a reference to Donald Duck since Farfetch'd is his only Pokemon. To make matters worse, neither of these trainers are rematchable in Fire Red and Leaf Green, so after these 2 fights you're pretty much exclusively seeing Farfetch'd from the back for the rest of the game. Assuming you're crazy enough to even use one in the first place. But then I got to thinking, isn't Farfetch'd intentionally obscure? After all, the whole concept behind this Pokemon is that it's a bird being hunted to extinction for how tasty it is. So it makes sense that the games would use this Pokemon far less than others, especially considering the Kanto already has 2 fairly populous normal flying type species. So I kinda doubt that Game Freak actually forgot about this Pokemon. So I turned my attention to Pokemon in Kanto that are somehow even rarer than Farfetch'd on trainers' teams. The first is Chansey, who only appears on Cool Trainer Alexa's team in Victory Road, but again, like Farfetch'd, Chansey is very intentionally underused. I mean, it's literally in the name. Then we have Ditto and Pinsir, who oddly don't appear on any Kanto region trainers' teams. Ditto is a bit of a weird case, as it definitely lacks a niche in Gen 1 due to the absence of breeding, but it is fairly common as far as wild Pokemon go, and it was designed with a clear gimmick in mind, so I don't think they forgot to give it a purpose. But Pinsir definitely has an argument to dethrone Farfetch'd as Kanto's most forgotten Pokemon, as it can only be found in the Safari Zone, and only in Pokemon Blue and Leaf Green I might add. This means in Pokemon Red and Fire Red, Pinsir is completely absent from the game without trading. Heck, in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Pinsir is actually even rarer than Farfetch'd is, only appearing 1% of the time on routes 14 and 15, while Farfetch'd at least has a 10% encounter rate in those titles. Pinsir is so uncommon in Kanto that I think Game Freak were even hoping that most fans missed it when they tried remaking it into a weird pseudo-counterpart to Heracross starting in Gen 2. And when you compare it to other intentionally rare Gen 1 gimmicks like Ditto, Chansey, and Farfetch'd, Pinsir definitely feels like the Pokemon that Game Freak made with the least amount of purpose in mind. Now, Johto is a region that has tons of competition for the most forgotten Pokemon. After all, this region is notorious for having all kinds of Pokemon that are completely unusable to yourself and other trainers alike. Unknown, Shuckle, Slugma, Tyrogue, Ursaring, Porygon 2, Gligar. These Pokemon aren't used by any trainers across both Kanto and Johto. Not to mention, they're extremely hard to obtain by the player themselves. One of the most insulting ones has to be Misdreavus. It's literally the only ghost type introduced in these games, and not a single trainer uses it, not even Morty. And it can only be caught at Mount Silver, you know, the very last area in the game. Boy, I sure am glad this thing hard counters Red's entire team. Said nobody ever. And it's a measly 10% chance at nighttime only. Childhood me had a spelling test the next day. How was I supposed to play my Game Boy Color with no backlight in the middle of the night and get away with it? Short answer, I didn't. And you know what the real kicker is? While Crystal almost universally improved the encounter rates for many obscure Gen 2 Pokemon like Snubbull and Sneasel, this game actually nerfs Misdreavus' encounter rate from 10% to 5%. Why? After all that, it's honestly surprising that there's still another Pokemon who I'd argue is just as bad, if not worse than Misdreavus. Similar to Pinsir, it's not even in one of its debut versions, and that Pokemon is Skarmory. Since Wild Skarmory are exclusive to Pokemon Silver, and like Misdreavus, Skarmory appears on 0 trainers' teams in Gen 2, that means players of Pokemon Gold could literally never lay eyes on this Pokemon unless they were battling against one through the link cable. Since sales for Gold and Silver were roughly 50-50, that means an estimated 11 million Pokemon players probably never saw Skarmory in-game until Ruby and Sapphire released 3 years later. And even in Silver and Crystal, it's a 5% encounter on Route 45, which is an extremely skippable area since you should have Fly by that point in the game to get back to New Bark Town from Blackthorn City, so even players of those games likely had a hard time finding it. I'm gonna be real, I have no idea why Skarmory is so neglected in Gen 2. Like, Slugma, I can understand Game Freak looking at that one and saying, hey, you know what? Not our greatest work. Let's just hide it in a random grass patch in the postgame. But like, Skarmory? This is probably one of the sickest looking Pokemon in the entire generation. And you have a Steel-type gym in Johto! Why on earth did this guy go almost completely unused? Honestly, I'm not sure whether Skarmory or Misdreavus had it worse in Gen 2, but one thing's for sure, they both are not being included in Jinichi Masuda's will. Moving on to Gen 3, things start to get a little better. Well, aside from Feebas, but like Farfetch'd, that one is also intentionally made rare. But it's still surprising how many Pokemon don't make it onto any trainer's teams. Surprisingly, Snorunt isn't on any team in the entire region, and Glalie is only on Glacia's team. But maybe that's because of Hoenn's warm climate. Shedinja is notably excluded from any teams as well, but more than likely for a good reason. To avoid any scenarios where kids would chuck their Game Boys out of second-story windows because they don't know how Winter Guard works. In Hoenn's extremely vast ocean of water types, you see what I did there? Not all of them are given equal treatment. Huntail, Gorobus, and Relicanth are all water types that fail to make any trainers' teams in Gen 3. But I can at least see why, as Game Freak more than likely intended for these to be secret Pokemon, with Relicanth being an ancient Pokemon tied to the Reggie side quest, and Huntail and Gorobus are locked behind the abandoned ship side quest. So they definitely weren't forgotten about. One of the rarest Pokemon in the entire region, Chimecho, is at least accounted for in a random Trick House trainer's team, but surprisingly, Grumpig is not. And after giving all of my reasonings for these other Pokemon, I'm pretty well convinced that Grumpig may be Gen 3's most forgotten Pokemon, at least on the development side of things. Spoink is littered all throughout Hoenn and other forms of Gen 3 media as well, but Grumpig is almost nowhere to be seen. It can't be caught anywhere in the wild, and despite the existence of a Psychic-type gym and various Psychic trainers across the region, it's used by none of them. It doesn't even get a Gen 3 anime episode to star in. Even outside of its debut generation, Grumpig is incredibly scarce across the franchise, as it only appears at Reversal Mountain in Pokemon Black 2 only, or in the northern province of Paldea. I guess I can sorta understand why though. Compared to Spoink, Grumpig does feel like it lacks some personality or cool design elements. It's one of the few Pokemon that feels incredibly overshadowed by the popularity of its pre-evolution, which in all reality, isn't even that popular. People are still just gonna use Gardevoir anytime they have to play through Hoenn. Starting in Gen 4, it definitely feels like Game Freak is much more aware of all of their creations. In fact, this is the first region where not a single non-legendary Pokemon gets left off every trainer's team. Well, in Platinum at least, where the regional dex is actually good. I can't say the same about Diamond and Pearl, where like half the dex is missing. Sure, there are some Pokemon that we, the fans, may forget about, like Lumineon, but objectively speaking, at least it has representation on a few trainers' teams. So Game Freak at least tried with that one. Now, taking the entire franchise into account, yes, Glameow is the most forgotten Pokemon from this region, as it's literally only been in 3 games in the last 18 years. Pearl, Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus. But within the actual region of Sinnoh, Glameow is a plague, populating more than 20 teams across the region. This actually makes it the 4th most fought against Pokemon in all of Sinnoh, only falling behind the usual suspects of Machoke, Gyarados, and Golbat, who's used by like every evil organization ever. So with that out of the way, there's only one Pokemon remaining who is left almost completely by the wayside by the dev team: Wormadam. In all 3 iterations of Sinnoh, Wormadam is only used by one trainer, Beauty Devon on Route 214. In Platinum, she uses all 3 forms of Wormadam, but in Diamond and Pearl, as well as the remakes, she only uses Plant Cloak. May I also add that Route 214 is a split path route, which makes Devon one of the easiest trainers to miss in the entire game. And with Burmy being one of the worst new Pokemon introduced in Gen 4 from a viability standpoint, and only female Burmy will evolve into Wormadam to begin with, it's no wonder why this is commonly the last Pokemon that people register in their Sinnoh dexes. And unlike previous Pokemon we've discussed, it doesn't really feel like Wormadam is intentionally rare by any means. I mean, unless Game Freak were actually trying to hide one of their worst creations, which I can certainly understand. I have a few unlisted videos now, but that's besides the point. Hey, just wanted to say that we're getting really close to 250,000 subscribers, and most people watching this video probably aren't subscribed, so if you're watching, I would really appreciate if you subbed. Gen 5, like Gen 4, sees every Pokemon pretty well represented throughout the region. Despite Unova introducing more Pokemon than any other generation, none of them feel particularly forgotten about. And it certainly does help that we have 2 entirely different pairs of games to break down. Even Pokemon that fans commonly forget like Cryogonal and Druddigon are pretty well represented throughout the region. The next Pokemon that came to mind are the duo of Durant and Heatmor. They're only repped by a handful of trainers in Unova, and both are only found at the very end of the games. Heatmor is a bit less common in the wild, but Durant is less common on trainers' teams, so they kinda even out. In fact, neither of these Pokemon are obtainable during Black 2 and White 2's main story, as both of them are moved to post-game locations. But looking further at the trainer data, the only non-legendary Pokemon that are never used in the Unova region are Zorua, who is an event Pokemon this gen, so we don't have to worry about it, and then Rufflet and Vullaby, surprisingly. I didn't think too much about this at first, seeing as how they're late-game version-exclusive Pokemon, plus Braviary and Mandibuzz are both pretty common in both games, but then I realized that might be the problem here. In fact, Black 2 and White 2 feel like they try to cut Rufflet and Vullaby out of the game entirely. These versions acknowledge that they evolve way too late and seek to solve the problem by making Mandibuzz or Braviary, depending on the version you're playing, obtainable at level 25 on Route 4. These games do the same thing with Volcarona to try and eliminate the need for Larvesta, but at the very least there are still trainers that use Larvesta. Not only is there no reason for the player to catch Rufflet and Vullaby in Black 2 and White 2, but there's also zero chance of you seeing an NPC use either of them. And they're version exclusive, so White 2 players will never see Vullaby, and Black 2 players will never see Rufflet. So with all of that evidence stacked up, surprisingly, these two are more neglected than the incredibly underwhelming duo of Durant and Heatmor, and that's saying a lot. Well, from the largest generation to the smallest, surely it's easier to give all of your kids attention when there's only 72 of them. Okay, maybe not the best metaphor, but even if it was, it still isn't true. Will you believe me that even with a dex this small, there are still Pokemon that go completely unused by trainers? This includes incredibly average Pokemon like Inkay and Phantump and Spritzee and Bergamite and Noibat. Seriously, what the heck is wrong with this region? Furfrou is one that people commonly bring up as it literally hasn't been in a single Switch Pokemon game yet, but seeing as how it's at least repped in XY and it has a dedicated gimmick to it with a haircut feature, I'll give it a pass. So of those aforementioned unrepresented Pokemon, the one that I find the most egregious is definitely Spritzee. First of all, it's a version exclusive, so no chance for Pokemon X players to ever see it. Meanwhile, its counterpart Swirlix is at least represented by a handful of trainers. Plus, this is the gen that introduced Fairy-type Pokemon. And they tried to drive us crazy with them. There's a Fairy Gym, a Fairy Box Legendary, a Fairy Evolution, a Fairy Girl Trainer class, Fairy Godparents! And nearly 20% of all the new Pokemon introduced are fairies. So for Spritzee to get so little representation in this region, it sticks out like a sore thumb. In Alola, man, I wish I could count legendary Pokemon because is there really any point to Cosmoem existing aside from the plot? It's just kinda weird to have a whole Pokemon exist for the purpose of like 2 cutscenes, but maybe that's just me. Regardless, I guess it's important though. One Pokemon that goes completely unrepped by any trainers is Wimpod, but I also believe that to be intentional, seeing as how Wimpod is one of Alola's rarest Pokemon and it's an exclusive overworld encounter. So I think Game Freak knew what they were doing with this one. Aside from it, there are only 2 other Alola region Pokemon nowhere to be found on trainers' teams, Jangmo-o and Hakamo-o. And I'll go ahead and say it, Hakamo-o might just be one of the most forgotten modern-day Pokemon that I can think of. In Alola, wild Jangmo-o are found in Vast Pony Canyon anywhere between level 43 and level 46. Not that it really matters though, because for some reason, Game Freak made it so they evolve into Hakamo-o at level 35, and then Komo-o at level 45. So even if you catch the lowest possible level Jangmo-o, you would still only have a Hakamo-o for a single level before it evolves again. Side note, can I say how much I absolutely hate reading their names in a script? But yeah, this is something I would maybe expect out of Kanto or Johto, but definitely not a modern day region like Alola. And especially not for a member of a pseudo-legendary family. I've heard of middle children being ignored, but this is a whole different level. In the Galar region, I was a bit surprised to see how underutilized the fossil Pokemon are. Arctovish and Arctozolt are both completely absent from any trainer's rosters, while Dracovish and Dracozolt are at least found on a few random Wyndham trainers teams in the postgame. Of these guys, Arctovish definitely has it the worst though. While Arctozolt is missing from trainers' teams, at least both of its fossils are obtainable in Sword, so it can be revived without any need for trading or relying on the Digging Duo's RNG. Unfortunately for Arctovish, its fossils are split between versions, so it's one of the hardest Pokemon to get in general. You pretty much have to rely on the Digging Duo. If there's one other Pokemon in Galar who can compete with Arctovish for most neglected though, it's probably Clobbopus. Clobbopus is likewise found on 0 trainers' teams. It's only found naturally on one route in Galar, where its evolved form Graplocked is also able to be found, and it evolves by leveling up knowing Taunt, which I honestly didn't know because I've never had to evolve this thing. But it already knows Taunt as soon as you catch it, so like Hakamo-o, it's a 1 level and done evolution. So which of these two Pokemon is more irrelevant to Galar? Man, I don't even know. But since Arctovish is at least tied to some sort of gimmick, I'm tempted to say Clobbopus. It feels like a Pokemon that had absolutely 0 impact on Sword and Shield. And finally, Scarlet and Violet. These games have a whopping 440 trainers present in the Paldea region, which means it's very surprising that we still have Pokemon that are totally unaccounted for. Dolliv, Tinkatuff, Wiglet, Palafin, Glimmet, Gimmighoul, Gholdengo, and basically all of the Titan Pokemon aren't used by any NPCs, making for the largest total of unrepresented Pokemon that we've had since Gen 2. So to start narrowing things down, we can take out the Titans. Since Game Freak likely wanted our first encounters with these Pokemon to be their designated boss fights, Palafin can be taken out since it's tied to a gimmick that NPCs would likely never abuse, plus it's just way too strong in that form anyway. Same goes for Gimmighoul and Gholdengo being gimmick Pokemon, and plus Gimmighoul is literally everywhere even if it isn't on trainers' teams. Glimmet is very much an intentionally rare Pokemon tied to Area 0 in some way that's never formally explained, but hey, Geeta has the Glamora, look over there! And Wiglet is a regional fake or convergent evolution, so we can strike it from the list, leaving us with Dolliv and Tinkatuff. But both of these Pokemon are pretty well represented in the wild, and their evolution lines are at least acknowledged throughout the game. So I'm going with a pair of Pokemon that I haven't mentioned yet, Rellor and Rabsca. Despite the existence of both a bug and psychic-type gym, neither are seen there, instead only belonging to singular NPCs out in the middle of scenic nowhere. In addition, both of their gimmicks are overshadowed by a much more popular family, the Palmy line. Both Palmo and Rellor evolve through the same method of walking 1,000 steps, and upon evolving into Palmot or Rabsca, they both learn Revival Blessing. Both of these could have been neat distinctions for the Rellor family, but instead they just feel like repeats of the more popular Palmot. Rellor and Rabsca are also 2 of the rarest Pokemon across the Paldea region and its DLC areas, and it doesn't really feel intentional unless they were just trying to hide the poop roller Pokemon from the public, which I suppose is understandable. But yeah, I'm pretty surprised that Game Freak didn't do more with a Pokemon as cool and unique as Rabsca. But hey, that's gonna wrap things up for today's video. If you enjoyed, then be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.